Hey Mo, hey Wendy, how you doing?
How you doing,
Great.
James?
Great. Well, thanks for joining me today. And hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 76 of the Invest with James West podcast series. I'm pleased to have with me Mo Vargas, CEO of BayoTech, and Wendy Rollstin, CFO. BayoTech is disrupting the established centralized hydrogen supply chain with a new, highly efficient model of local hydrogen production hubs. Producing on a small scale, its unique technology allows the company to make reliable, cost-effective, low-carbon hydrogen accessible today. BayoTech has a complete portfolio of hydrogen production, transport, storage, and fueling solutions to help support its customers' transition to hydrogen. Mo is BayoTech's CEO. He has vast experience bringing new technologies to market. His previous experience includes executive leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies such as GE, Siemens, AES, and Lockheed Martin. He's also led 4 early-stage technology companies, including BayoTech. Mo holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of California Irvine and an MBA from the University of Southern California. Wendy focuses on BayoTech's financial results, operations, and supporting business growth as the company's CFO. She specializes in working with companies with high growth, rapidly changing industries, and started her career at KPMG. She holds a BBA in Business Administration and Accounting from the University of New Mexico. Both will be available also at our Clean Energy and Transition Technologies Conference next week in New York City, so hopefully you can meet them there. Mo, Wendy, thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. So before we dive into learning more about your technology, let's start a little more high level. Could you provide our listeners an update on the current hydrogen market, today, how hydrogen is being sourced, transported, and used?
Yeah, thanks, James. Traditionally, the hydrogen market produces about 75 million tons of hydrogen. And the industries that it serves are going to be, your typical, refineries on ammonia, who take up, about 70% of that. And then you have methanol and other chemical manufacturing. What's interesting is that it's produced in large facilities. So it's either located on site or very close to the centers of demand, and delivered, usually by some pipeline. There's very limited amount, a little over 1,000 miles of pipeline, for example, here in the US. And the big challenge with that is with hydrogen being the lightest molecule, to be able to move that hydrogen, and because of the characteristics of what hydrogen can do to many types of materials when used in pipes, it's going to cost about $1 million a mile. So the production that you see today is pretty centered in the Gulf region in Texas and Louisiana. Finally, what we see in terms of the market that the industrial gas companies usually call merchant is about 5% of that market. And anytime they have anything that's going to be beyond 250 to 300 miles, they're going to transport that via liquid trailer. Current hydrogen liquefaction plants operate with a relatively modest thermodynamic efficiency of about 30 to 35%. And to justify that high cost of liquefaction, logistics, and long distance, users are required to offtake usually at least about half a ton minimum. So there's a lot of challenges with evaporations too. So keep in mind that a lot of people don't know this, but hydrogen has the lowest boiling point of all substances, second only to helium, right? And so keeping that liquid at that level is pretty challenging. And then finally, I think the hydrogen has emerged as a critical low carbon intensity fuel to replace diesel and gas. So the hydrogen sector is really enjoying, unprecedented momentum right now. And that's really where our focus is on. Our focus isn't as much on kind of the refineries and the ammonia, but really on all this distributed amount of hydrogen that's going out for all these new applications. And with if you look at all the different countries and jurisdictions that have come up with hydrogen strategies and roadmaps, we're looking at a market today that's valued at about 125 billion. And we see it, growing to about 500 billion in the next 15 years.
Wow. Well, can we dig a little deeper to hear about some of that growth in hydrogen adoption and emerging applications? What industries are adopting hydrogen quickly? Where do you see the most potential in the near term?
Yeah, so first of all, we believe obviously, hydrogen is essential to the energy transition because it's going to be uniquely suited to serve certain applications better, just because of its lighter carbon footprint and energy density. So we kind of break our market down into 4 different pieces, kind of the emerging applications. We have the mobility applications, which is what most people kind of hear about. So that's kind of the medium to heavy duty trucks, the buses, off-road equipment, trains, ships. And really those require kind of the long range, lighter payloads, quick refueling that you can get from hydrogen. So that's kind of our first segment. The next one would be like off-grid power for backup power applications and primary power applications. That's one that you maybe don't hear as much about, but it's really getting a lot of adoption currently. Hydrogen is a more reliable backup power source than diesel. And a lot of the companies that are even using that today are using it for its reliability, not so much even for its, its applications with kind of a better carbon intensity. The next one's kind of hydrogen blending. So in particular, a lot of natural gas utilities are starting to use hydrogen blending and testing that in their natural gas pipelines to create a cleaner burning fuel at the source. And then kind of distributed light industrial applications would be our final market segment. And these are all, as Mo mentioned, kind of the new, emerging applications that we see as our market. These applications haven't been well served by the centralized model. So, you've got the centralized model that's kind of liquefying and transporting long distance, and it's creating a lot of adoption challenges because it's more expensive. When you get to these smaller applications, you've got a more expensive hydrogen molecule. You've also, by the way, added a lot of carbon intensity by doing that long haul transportation. So we see this as, really an opportunity for those new and emerging applications to get hydrogen. And they're, by the way, the first that get interrupted if there's any shortages of hydrogen. These new and emerging users are the first ones to kind of have their supply cut off. And that's kind of the worst thing to have happen when you're trying to adopt hydrogen.
Right. So what does the market need in order to accelerate the use of hydrogen? Kind of what is your technology trying to solve for?
Yeah, really, I mean, what these emerging users need is solutions. They need hydrogen. It's interesting because today, what is probably offered more often is methods to produce hydrogen, or, here's how you would store hydrogen, here's how you compress it. They just want hydrogen. They want solutions. And so that's really what our company is focused on, quite frankly, is providing hydrogen solutions to these distributed customers. So the key to adoption, we believe, is really first availability. As I mentioned before, they really need reliable access to hydrogen, and then they want low cost, and then they want low carbon and a path to even lower carbon hydrogen. That's kind of how they look at the market.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for the more macro out there in hydrogen. Can we get the quick elevator pitch on BayoTech and how the company was started?
Yeah, no, for sure. Wendy mentioned, we believe that to develop widespread adoption of hydrogen, that users today are seeking high pressure hydrogen solutions. Development of infrastructure is going to be slow, and it's going to take decades, especially when you look at some of the, the language that's out there and how people talk about it. And they're just being super high level about this. BayoTech, we're really disrupting the established centralized hydrogen supply chain with a much more efficient model of hydrogen production hubs that are local and can be on site. Customer can pick up their hydrogen with their own trailers that we manufacture for them. This gives them the freedom of choice, because that's something that you see a lot of the off-takers are really frustrated with, that there's very limited amounts of choice. We can also bulk deliver large amounts of hydrogen for them if that's what they like, using our high pressure trailers that hold up to 3 times what traditional type 1 trailers capacity is, and in a much more smaller footprint, by the way. And we can even dispense and deliver to customers too. So we're making low carbon, low cost hydrogen accessible today for everyone in this growing demand. In terms of our technology, we really come up with some innovative generation technologies where we started. That originally came out of India National Labs in New Mexico. Then we built upon that exclusive license that we have for our core design. We continue to innovate and create new intellectual property, filing 4 additional patents in 2020 and several others in 2021 and 22 around our compression products. And then finally, after quoting over $1 billion in hydrogen generation, we realized that most customers today were just not ready to buy generators, right? We were super excited at first. We were bidding all of this, over $1 billion of quotes, and we thought, okay, and then we realized a lot of people were just kind of kicking the tires, trying to put together their models, trying to understand what is in the art of the possible. And then we realized at that point, and we were fortunate to be, really well supported by New Light Partners, when we did our round C at the end of 2020, who led that round, that we needed a more holistic solution, and what we needed to do was build an ecosystem for customers to come and transact today. So that led us to acquiring in 2021 IGX Group. And IGX was an established leader in the design and manufacture of high pressure cylinder hydrogen storage and delivery equipment. And with this acquisition, we became a full service hydrogen supplier, where we could offer localized production, transport, storage, and fueling solutions. To date, we've delivered over 600 high pressure transport systems and storage systems, and have an incredible customer base of all kinds of customers, including a lot of really conservative customers.
Interesting. So what are hydrogen hubs, and can this work in every local market?
Yeah, so our hydrogen hubs are really meant to work in every local market. So that's kind of the, the approach, is that for these new and emerging applications, they need hydrogen where they're located. So while certain markets are kind of adopting hydrogen more quickly, nationwide adoption is coming, because it is the way that we're going to get, transportation to work and all of those sorts of things. So, we're deploying our network of distributed hydrogen hubs throughout the US. We start with our units that are 1 ton a day, and we'll be locating those hubs as close to the customer as possible. And then using our, as Mo mentioned, the high pressure, gas cylinders with our transport units that we acquired in 2021, we'll be using those to deliver those. So that's kind of the thought process, is getting those hubs out and as close to the customers as possible.
Okay. And do you have a hub in operation today, and kind of what's your growth plan for these hubs?
Yeah, so our pilot plan is operating in Albuquerque, and then our first 2 hubs will be online by the end of 2022. So those first 2 hubs will be in Albuquerque and St. Louis, and then those will be closely followed in 23 with some locations in California and Oklahoma. So we're targeting like 12 installed hubs by the end of 2023.
Okay. And how do you think about managing your scaling process, both the manufacturing and the deployment of hubs?
Yeah, I mean, what's unique about our business model too is that these are small plants, and so they're actually relatively easy to scale. As opposed to kind of the traditional model of these really large centralized production facilities. These are $10 million plants. So and they're manufactured and then deployed to the site on a truck. They're transported to the site, kind of quickly connected and commissioned. So they're relatively easy to scale, and that's part of the beauty of our business model. So really, our goal is to just get our development team working as quickly as possible to secure sites and get them permitted so that we can start deploying our units. One thing about our approach to deployment is, we're working to find sites that can fit up to 7 tons. And then we'll permit that site for 2 tons a day, and then we'll initially deploy 1 ton a day. So even that process will create a situation where we can easily scale up, because we will already have sites that are generating hydrogen, and they can scale up to 7 tons pretty quickly.
Okay, got it. So one of the things we talk about a lot is the cost to decarbonize, and you mentioned earlier, both of you mentioned earlier, that BayoTech is one of the industry leaders in producing the lowest cost, lowest carbon intensity hydrogen. How do you guys analyze the cost to decarbonize, and how does your technology compare to other alternatives that are out there in the market?
Yeah, James, if there's one thing I'd like people to take away from our conversation today, is this whole nonsense around the colors of hydrogen.
Right.
Hydrogen colors are meaningless, confusing, and do not create a way to compare the full environmental impact that the hydrogen molecule has from cradle to grave. Which, in using carbon intensity associated with the feedstock use, transportation, compression, storage, liquefaction, it's a much better way, more holistic way to meet, the goals that we all have as a society, which is to reduce carbon in our environment. So to accurately account for that environmental impact of a molecule, we need to use a CI score. The score is based on life cycle carbon emissions resulting from upstream production and downstream activities. It's measured in grams of CO2 per megajoule, and it's what's used in California. CARB uses that. In UK, they passed their legislation. In California, you don't talk about colors. In UK, you don't talk about colors. And even here at the federal level, we're really realizing that, carbon intensity is a better way, because really, if you think about whether it's DOE or legislation, they really should not be picking technologies. They should be laying out for us what are the goals we're trying to achieve. And the beauty of our system is we compete to meet those goals, not them selecting, and I think it's proven historically when governments tend to choose technologies, it doesn't usually work out that well. In terms of the cost to decarbonize and reduction in carbon intensity, our on-site hydrogen production from natural gas outperforms all other existing and emerging technologies. And this is why it's important to measure carbon intensity, because it's very misleading for some of the kind of the greenwashing around electrolysis. If you look at our on-site technology, it reduces carbon intensity by 40% when compared to diesel. So, and that's really the incumbent today is our gasoline and diesel, right? And we like to think of it that what electrification of vehicles and other things are to gasoline, that's what hydrogen is to diesel. And when you compare, electrolysis in California, for example, which is, and that's one of our states with the greatest renewable capacity at 33%, it's only a 15% decrease. And when you use our technology with a mix of natural gas and 27% dairy renewable, we can actually reach zero carbon intensity. So our hydrogen was, and then in terms of cost, because it's just like carbon intensity, we obviously need deployment of this. If you look at us, we were already at cost parity with kind of the traditional diesel costs. Now and achieving that 40% benefit. And with diesel having doubled over the last year, and even with some natural gas increase in, as recent as $9, we can still be significantly more competitive and get that carbon benefit. And then finally, electrolysis is often associated with green hydrogen. And but when an electrolyzer draws electrical power from the grid, the carbon impact can be significant. In some states, that are, as we all know, it's just kind of like driving the Tesla in Kentucky, right? It's the same thing for the electrolyzer. You can actually end up with the carbon intensity from an electrolyzer in states that are all coal or very carbon-based power. They actually end up being more inefficient than even diesel. So it's something that I think as we get into numbers and get away from these colors, everything kind of starts tracking correctly. And then we can really see where, because there are places where electrolysis is effective, right? Especially if you have the off-taker right there, cohabiting with it.
Right. Can you give us a sense of what your current customer base looks like? I know you mentioned a lot of guys kicking the tires, but who are the ones that are starting to move into deployment mode now?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of customers that are starting to move into deployment, and through the sale of our high pressure gas transport and storage units, we already service a lot of those customers. So we've got a lot of established blue chip companies. You would recognize the names of all of those. We sell to the industrial gas suppliers, and then we have a large network of emerging hydrogen companies, such as utilities. We've got transit authorities, et cetera. So. We've delivered more than 600 high pressure gas transport systems since 2001. We're supplying fuel cell backup power systems, about 1,400 fuel cell backup power systems throughout the US. So we're already out there in a pretty big way.
Okay. And are there any similar technologies in the space? What's the competitive landscape like?
Our product portfolio covers the entire distributed hydrogen value chain, and I think that's pretty unique in the industry. You've got us, whether it's on the distributed hydrogen hubs that Wendy discussed, and obviously, we are in-house owned hydrogen generation assets creating hydrogen. Obviously, we're in the selling the molecules business today, and we sell a lot of and deliver a lot of molecules to different customers. Hydrogen generation technology, we're happy to support people who want to buy their own generators and produce their own hydrogen, and then obviously the transport trailers for the movement of high pressure hydrogen. And then also we have applications, power generators and light towers are something that are very popular. We've sold some of that to some of the government entities, and it's been used at the Super Bowl, and we've sold some to Hawaii too. And then dispensing solutions, right? Because I think as part of that overall solution, you need to go from kind of cradle to grave. In terms of the our patented technology, it's not simply kind of a traditional SMR. Our catalyst in the reaction requires a high amount of heat to generate hydrogen, as most do. So with a conventional design, the inefficient heat transfer into the reactors results in a lot of that feedstock being used and consumed to produce heat. Some of the heat produced, is lost and it's wasted. But in our case, we have a 2-in-2 bayonet that recuperates that internally for direct use and uses a lot less energy. And then finally, on the high pressure hydrogen transport trailer side, we've got an industry leader in payload and capacity, and we've been super fortunate to work really closely with a lot of the customers that Wendy was mentioning, whether they're industrial gas companies, oil and gas companies, natural gas utilities, and we've over the years really learned a lot from them, and we've been able to create really what's the standard for high pressure in North America. So we use Type 3 composite cylinders. We think they're better than Type 4s for this type of application, especially with the speed of dispensing and kind of the in and out. And then we also build our own valves. So we have CG10, CG9, CG5 type valves and thermal protection devices that are unique. And when you're dealing with really conservative customers like we're talking about, James, I mean, some of these customers, it's taken us 18 months of due diligence to get through to be able to get the product ready. But once you get through that process, most of these customers have transacted 3, 4, 5 times with us, and we do tens of millions of dollars.
Right. Well, how do your investor partnerships help support your growth strategies and obviously the ultimate goal of helping the industry transition to hydrogen?
Yeah, we've been really lucky. We've got a great investor group that's very supportive. They all have deep experience in energy transition and most importantly, kind of believe in our vision of distributed hydrogen. So our largest partner investor is New Light Partners. It's a private equity firm out of New York that they do a lot of growth equity investing, but have a focus on energy transition as well. They've got about over 4 billion in assets under management, and they were involved in our Series C financing. And then other investors that have been invested in us include Opal Fuels, Nutrien, the largest fertilizer company in the world, Cottonwood Technology Fund, and Sun Mountain were 2 of our early venture funds, and then also Caterpillar has invested in the company as well. Right.
Okay. And then, what are your key strategic objectives for the back half of this year and for next year? So when we sit here a year from now, how will we know you're making progress on your goals?
For us, our mantra, it's all about orders, sales, which is the conversion of those orders and getting it out the door. Our hub strategy, and then cash management. We've experienced significant growth with 5 quarters in a row of 25% growth or more. We're 350% year on year for Q1 2022.
Wow.
Laser focused on the rollout of all those hub sites throughout the US. And our commercial team has identified some great anchor tenants for hydrogen offtake in those markets. And that's one of the benefits our business model has, James, is that unlike others who are having to build either 30-ton or 50-ton or 100 or even the thousands of tons, we actually start off, as Wendy mentioned before, with our 7-2-1 approach. So being able to build 1 ton and have that be profitable allows you kind of to plant that small flag, get that ecosystem going. Because as we all know, a lot of what's happening in hydrogen is around the chicken and the egg challenge.
Sure.
We've assembled a great team of experienced project developers, project managers, and partners to ensure the project execution of what we're doing to be both budget and on time. And we're de-risking our execution plan by actively managing supply chain, which obviously is a huge challenge nowadays, pre-ordering critical materials and partnering with industry leaders. And then finally, we want to focus on some acquisitions. We saw the tremendous value that we created by bringing generation and distribution together. We think there are a few other pockets that we can add on here to really build up our ecosystem for our customers, which will enable us to grow at a pace, the pace we have planned, because we have a pretty aggressive plan in terms of going out. It'll help us reduce our costs, which we can be able to pass part of that on to our customers. And then finally, continue lowering carbon intensity, right?
Sure. Well, last one for me, guys, is what's the one big misperception about BayoTech or the space that you operate in?
I think the biggest thing we're constantly educating people on is around electrolysis. And by the way, we've looked at acquiring several electrolysis companies, so we're not against it. And neither Wendy nor I invented the bayonet, so we're happy to really we want to build a almost technology agnostic, as long as there's true IP creating value portfolio of products, right? But we think that by people assuming that electrolysis is the cleanest option for hydrogen production by default, it really changes the picture when you start digging into the details and comparing our technology versus what electrolysis does. And even when I think even when hydrogen is produced using grid electricity, as we talked about before, you're going to see there's a significant different result on what's happening. And I think the finally, since we use common resources, the hydrogen we can produce closer will be easier for customers to consume. And that's going to mean a lot less money is spent on long haul delivery, which in turn reduces the overall carbon footprint in hydrogen life cycle. And not to mention that, we can get a much cheaper cost of hydrogen, because that's really going to be the key to getting the whole big ball rolling, right? Right now we're having really good activity and things are getting going. But if we really want to have a successful hydrogen market and be part of that portfolio of, kind of the lower carbon intensity solutions that we all need, we need to, continue focusing on how we can get that hydrogen molecule at the lowest cost and at the lowest carbon intensity possible.
Right. Well, guys, this was great to catch up on hydrogen, catch up on BayoTech. I look forward to seeing you guys at the conference next week in person. And any closing comments you want to make, Mo or Wendy?
No, hey James, thanks for the invitation. We really enjoyed the conversation with you, and it's great to really be able to spotlight all the activity that's happening in hydrogen. I mean, not only with BayoTech, but a lot of really good companies are out there doing it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.